Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books. I only have 4 to talk about. That's 8. That is 8. I only have 4 to talk about. Hopefully this won't be too long. So the first book that I'm going to discuss, I also have done or filmed an individual review for. If that is posted already, I'll put it in the card yonder. If it's not, then it's on its way. That is House of Earth and Blood, Crescent City, book number 1 by Sarah J. Maas. This is adult fantasy, it's urban fantasy. It's set in a industrialized world with modern technologies that like we have, but it's not Earth. It's a different world entirely. There are angels, fae, demons, mer people, werewolves, fire sprites, water sprites, chimera, and humans. We have our main character, Bryce, who is half fae, half human, which is a thing in this world. It's not great. She's living her party girl lifestyle, doing drugs, getting drunk, being promiscuous, just living it up with her friends with no real direction in her life. And then tragedy strikes. There's a mass murder that happens that impacts her on a personal level. And a couple years later, some more of these similar murders are happening. So they're like, there's a serial killer. And she gets roped into helping with this investigation. And I had a fucking great time reading this book. I love Sarah J. Maas. I have loved Sarah J. Maas for a long time. So I figured I would like this, you know? The only one I'm not gonna read of hers is A Court of Frost and Starlight. I just don't care. Because what I love about Sarah J. Maas is the way she tells an exciting ass story. It's just a roller coaster of emotions for me. Like, oh my Jesus. The pacing was really consistent throughout the book for me. I mean, it's a long ass book, but I found that every time I would sit down, I would read 50 to 100 pages like real fast. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize I read that much. And it's just because, yeah, the pacing, I eat it up. It's addicting. Her stories are addicting to me. And then the final like 100 to 200 pages, everybody's been saying this, but holy fucking shit, it's so true. It is a wild ride. It is just action-packed, so many oh shit moments, like big reveals happening, and like people just being the most badass of all the badasses ever in badassery, and I live for it. If you don't like her other books, you're not gonna love this one just because it's adult. Really, the only difference is there's more swearing, the word fuck is used, there's drugs being done on the page, and we're being like really promiscuous. And more, I would say a little bit more gore and violence also. But it's the same author, you know, it's the same person writing a similar story. But I don't fucking care. I thought it was so much fun. I thought it was so much fun that I did something I have not done before on my 1 to 10 scale. So I have my different categories that I rate on a 1 to 10 basis. One of them being good time, like was it a good time? Did I have a good time while reading this book? I gave this an 11 for good time because, oh, it was such a good fucking time. I cried at the end. I was hyped as fuck. Oh, I loved it. And I buddy read this with Ingrid at Ingrid Inspired, and she's also trash for Sarah J. Maas, and she finished it in like a day and a half or something. So she was like, oops, I finished the book. But so then I got to just talk like without being like, oh, spoilers for this chapter. I just was like, oh my God, I just read up to this part and holy shit. And so that was lots of fun. On my 1 to 10, this ended up getting an 8. And I would have given it a higher rating, save for the fact that the characters, I liked them. I liked all the characters. There wasn't, I mean, you know, there's bad people that you're supposed to not like, but all the characters I was supposed to like, I liked. But I didn't feel a huge connection with any of them necessarily. You know what I mean? Towards the end, I kind of did, and like in the future books, I could see myself, like Bryce herself, the main character, I could see myself really loving her later on. So that's why it's not even higher than it is. So an 8 means this is 4.5 Pushinicorns, which I round up to 5 stars on Goodreads. So yeah, if you like Sarah J. Maas, read this motherfucking book. Next up is a book that I picked up when I did the library challenge, and that is The Governess Game by Tessa Dare. My first foray into Tessa Dare, And one of my first forays really into historical romance, I would say. I don't read a lot of romance. And it's really weird because I live for romance in books that I read. Like a really great romance in a fantasy book, a really great romance in a historical fiction. I love it. I love it so much. But I just don't read that much pure romance. And I was like, I want to find my niche. I want to find what I like in romance. And so I picked this up and I read it in like basically one sitting. It was cute. It was fine. I didn't love it necessarily. There were certain parts that I really liked. There's certain parts that are like funny. One thing that I didn't like, and this is probably just me being nitpicky, but it like pulled me out of the story. The dude is arranging a mirror so that you can see the bed. Like while you're on the bed, you can see yourself in the mirror. And so he's having his friend like sit on the bed to like check it, right? He's like, prop yourself on one elbow and rest your head on your hand. Are you gonna draw me like one of your French girls? And I was like, okay, that's a line, that's like a cultural thing from our real life, and it pulled me out of the story. And I was like, that was weird. I didn't like that. But it wasn't a big fucking deal. But yeah, there was some funny stuff. But generally, I mean, it's really short and it just didn't impact me all that much. The premise is a woman who, she's pining away for this man that she met one time. She didn't even meet him. She just like bumped into him and she's like, oh my God, he's so handsome. And then she shows up for a job at this house, and he's the lord of the home, and he's like a playboy, he's a rake, he's just seducing all the women. She ends up being the governess to his two wards that are distant family members of his. These young girls that are little spitfires. They were a fun time. And yeah, things go for, it's romance, so they have a fucking romance. The plot ensues. Like, this isn't my kind of romance book, I guess. On my 1 to 10, I gave this a 6.1, which translates to 3 pushinicorns. Next, I read Womanish by Kim McLaren. This is a collection of personal essays. The kind of subtitle is A Grown Black Woman Speaks on Love and Life. And this I randomly picked up for the library challenge as well. It was during February, so I was like, hey, cool, Blackathon, whatever. Definitely did not finish this during Blackathon, though. It was insightful in parts and thought-provoking for sure. The very first one was probably my favorite. Or was it the first one or the second one? The first one was pretty cool too. But no, the second one, Becky and Me, I really, really liked that one. She's talking basically about her relationship with white women. And yeah, I really liked that. And in the first one, there was like a quote that really struck me. I mean, there's lots of, like I said, very thought-provoking. But this one in particular, she's talking about dating and kind of coming into her own as a black woman. Like as a young girl, seeing only white women being, you know, lauded on TV as like, they're so beautiful. Feeling as a young girl, like, am I worthy of being admired and being loved and someone finding me attractive? And she says, by the time I reached high school, the lack of interest from boys seemed to confirm my suspicion of undesirability. To be sure, plenty of white girls grow up thinking themselves unattractive. Few, however, think themselves unattractive because of their whiteness. This is the difference. And I was like, yes, like that is... And that's the whole other conversation just of like white privilege in general. She's recognizing like, yeah, I'm not saying white girls all think they're beautiful and have great self-esteem when they're kids. Like, no. But they're not sitting there worrying that they're ugly because they're white. And like, if someone does, that's incredibly rare and you must have a very specific experience in your life. On my 1 to 10, I gave this a 7, which translates to 4 pushinicorns. This next book was another one that I read. I read this definitely in one sitting over the course of like an hour and a half. But I had a weird experience with this book. And that is The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. This is young adult contemporary. We have 2 boys. They're 17 years old, seniors in high school, best friends, very closely bonded. People at school don't necessarily know it because they come from like 2 different cliques. One is very much jock popular guy. The other one isn't so popular. but like a good student and stuff. And this is not a spoiler, this is in the like fucking synopsis, that one of them starts seeing things. He's having hallucinations and he talks to his friend about it. And it's, the whole time I was reading this, I was like, this is like if the magicians wasn't actually, like in the magician's world, if that other world wasn't actually real and they were just crazy. Because didn't the main character at one point, it's been a while since I haven't read the book, but it's been a minute since I watched The Magicians, but I'm pretty sure I remember people telling them that like they sound crazy because there's a Fillory is their world that they think exists, and it does exist though. But I'm like, this is like if Fillory wasn't actually real and these people were crazy, because he just keeps seeing like this other world coming into their world, and he has a quest that he is given that he needs to fill out. His friend thinks maybe if we do this quest, like he'll stop having these hallucinations. And so that's what the book is. And he's devolving over time, and you can see it if you have the physical copy of the book. Like it starts off with like white pages and whatever, and there's some mixed media in here. And then it slowly becomes where there's like gray like spotting on the pages. And that gets like more and more severe, like there's more. And then by the end of it, it is entirely black pages. Also, it's like very, like these are a chapter, right? So the whole setup, the formatting of the book makes it incredibly engaging, and it sucked me in. It's just short little scenes that are carrying you through. And then especially with the physical book, like you can see the progression and you know that he's like losing it more and more. And so it just made me like so fucking curious. And there was just like this level of anticipation where I was just like, I gotta know what happens next. So I devoured the book, and it talks about some very serious things. I would say not just content warnings, I would say trigger warnings for panic attacks, PTSD, codependency, drowning attempt, I don't know, pyromania, is that a thing that people might have like triggers for? Definitely like the codependency, a lot of reviews that I saw, like people were legitimately psychologically triggered. I can't speak to the representation on a personal level, but from what I saw in reviews and some friends that I know who have read it and loved it, the mental health representation was done very well. Oh, also physical abuse. There is not aggressive, but there is, it's kind of tied up with the codependent relationship. It's toxic, and there is like little touches of physical abuse. There's also themes of figuring out sexual identity and kind of coming of age in that regard. And then the larger theme of just neglect and how that affects children and people in general later in life. But once I finished it, I was like, did I like this? Or did I kind of hate it? And I tweeted saying like that curious feeling when you aren't really sure if you liked a book or neutrally hated it. Like, I feel like I kind of neutrally hated it, where I don't actually hate it, but there are parts of it that I was like, ugh, no. One of my biggest things with it that like, I kept getting distracted, I guess, with thinking about how now the boys themselves, their parental situation is not great. One of them, his parents are just always gone. They just leave him for weeks at a time. And then the other one, his parents are divorced and his dad is nowhere to be seen. He like lives somewhere else. And then his mom is just hella depressed. So he calls her an inside mom. Like she doesn't leave the house. She doesn't do mom things. There was not one single adult who at all, and this is like over the course of an entire school year. And the one kid, like I said, he's a popular jock. So he's on fucking sports teams. He's surrounded by his jock friends. There's coaches involved, one can assume. And then the other one, he wasn't very popular, but he always had good grades. He was always very like well kept. He was poor, but he didn't want people to know he was poor or like assume he was poor. So he always kept his hair cut real nice and his clothes all nice and clean, and just was very like tidy and well kept. And then when the madness starts coming into play, like his girlfriend starts noticing that he's like being weird, and like he'll kind of trance out for a minute. His friends are like wondering what's going on with him. The other one starts like not doing well in school, coming to school with his hair not cut. looking like he's starving, like he's just wasting away. I get that we were having a conversation about neglect and how that affects kids when adults in their lives don't do shit. And I'm not saying that I wanted like an adult to come in and save the day and like do anything, but they didn't even question any of this. And that was weird to me. I don't know, it might just be because my own personal experience in my childhood was so vastly different. I know that it's a common thing for children to be overlooked, right? But I don't know, I find that the stories I've heard of that, it's usually children who are just consistently like just there, or they're always dirty, or they're that's just how they've always been, or they always struggle in school, or they're difficult constantly and like causing problems for teachers, and teachers just are like, I don't want to deal with you. That kind of thing. When a kid has like a drastic change, like you've always been a really good student and really well kept and tidy and good in class, and all of a sudden you're getting sent to detention. At one point, the dude sets some shit on fire in the parking lot, and not one single teacher or counselor is like, hey, what's going on? Why are you suddenly being so different? You know? Not one. And I just found it hard to believe. And nobody noticed. Nobody even questioned it. Again, I'm not saying I wanted some adult to come in and like rescue them and fix everything. That didn't need to happen for me to find it believable. But just to even question it, I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way. And then the ending. So like I said, there is a romance in here, and I didn't like how it was portrayed. I'm gonna get spoilery, so I'll put a timestamp when I stop being spoilery so you can jump ahead. Yeah, the whole romance between the two boys, between August and Jack, it felt like the way I read it was like it was supposed to be romantic. Did I find it romantic? Fuck no. Oh my God, so toxic and terrible and not healthy for either one of them. And like August especially, like his therapist said, like, you're much worse off now. And then we leave with Jack coming to pick him up and him being like, oh, at least he's here. And I wish we could have seen like some glimpse of them being healthy together. I read it very much as like I was supposed to feel like, oh, I'm so glad they're together. And I just didn't feel that way. And I didn't like that it felt like I was supposed to, I guess. Does that make sense? I really enjoyed the author's note at the end. Honestly, I think I liked the author's note better than the actual book. Oh man. On my 1 to 10, I gave this a 6.3, which translates to 3 pushinicorns. So I ended up pretty middle of the road with it. I didn't hate the whole experience. I didn't hate the whole book or anything, but there were parts of it that really just rubbed me the wrong way. There we have it. Those are the 4 books. I feel like I ended up talking a lot longer than I fucking wanted to. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.